This part of the review is about loops. This is an important part of the review. A lot of students have trouble with these questions on the exam. So if you're not comfortable with them, if you're not able to figure them out easily, you should practice. Use the code that I gave you in the review code and make some changes, work with it, make changes and then see if you can predict what will happen, then run it and see if that actually happens until you're really able to do that. And that's the best way to study for this. So the idea here is that you're able to look at some code that has a loop in it and read through it and really understand what's going to happen when that code executes. Okay, so let's start here. In our first question, we have a subroutine and it has a for loop in it. So one thing to do when you see a loop in the code is to ask yourself certain questions. What's the control variable for the loop? In this case, it's j. What's happening inside the loop? How many values of j are going to be used when the loop runs? Those kind of things. So, okay, let's take a look at the questions here. And you'll see that in this case, the limit depends on what the user puts in the input box. So in the first question, we're saying if the user puts 4 in the text box here, how many items are printed? Well, let's think about that. J starts with 1. Of course, it doesn't have to. It could start with 0 or 2 or really any number. So it's starting with 1 and limit will be 4. So we're going to have the values 1, 2, 3, and 4 because in a for loop, it's going to increment by 1 each time you run the loop. Okay, so my answer is 4, and that's answer E. If the user puts 0 in the text box, how many items are printed? Well, that means the limit is 0. So it's for j equals 1 to 0. In this case, where the beginning value is actually already greater than the ending value, the loop will not run at all. So the correct answer here is none, which is A. Okay, if the user puts 1 in the text box, how many items are printed? If the user puts a 1 in, then limit will be 1. For j equals 1 to 1, so we'll run the first time with j equal 1, and then trying to run with j equal 2, it's already too big. So we're going to get exactly 1, which is B. Now, suppose instead of saying for j equals 1 to limit, it said for j equals 0 to limit, and the user put a 3 in the text box. How many items would be printed? Well, I should say this is all predicated on the fact that 1 item prints each time we run the loop. So I'm really trying to ask you, how many times does the loop run? Well, let's think about this. We're going to start with j equals 0, and I'll run for j equals 0, 1, 2, and 3. That's a total of 4 times. So the correct answer here is E. Okay, question 5. If I change the code to read for j equal 2 to limit, and the user puts a 3 in the text box, how many items are printed? Well, we'll start with 2, then we'll do 3, and that's the last one we'll do. 4 is too big. So exactly 2 values here, and that's answer C. Okay. Now we have some questions about the loop actually does. If the user puts a 5 in the text box, what gets printed in the list box? Well, let's take a look at what's going on here. What we have is a sum, which starts at 0. Each time we run through the loop, we're adding j to the sum, and then printing the resulting sum. So, the user puts 5 in the text box, what's going to get printed? Well, first of all, we know 5 things, right? Because we're starting with 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how many, the values of j. But that's not exactly what gets printed. So we start with sum equals 0. When we do sum equals sum plus j, and j equals 1, we'll get a 1. So the first thing that prints is a 1. Then we do j equal 2. By the way, I'm doing this all verbally, but you're probably going to find this easier to do if you make a little table for yourself that says, okay, here's j, what's the value of sum for this value of j, and therefore what prints. So when j equals 2, we're going to add the 2 to the 1 we already had, and that'll give us 3, and we'll print the 3. So far we have 1 and 3. Okay, now we're going to do j equals 3. We'll add 3 to 3 and we'll get 6. So 1, 3, and 6. Next time through we'll add 4, so we'll have a 10. And then we'll add 5 and we'll have a 15. So 1, 3, 6, 10, and 15 would be the things that print. And that's answer C. Now what if the user put 1 in the text box? Well, in that case, we only run it once. We answered that question in this part. And you can see why it's important to consider that first, so you have a kind of framework to do the next part of the answer. So, all right, if j equals 1, then we're only going to get one answer here. Sum started at 0. We added 1. We printed the 1. That was it. So, my answer here is D. Same question for 0. Well, if you remember from before, we realized that if we do j equals 1 to 0, the loop will not run at all. So that means nothing will print, and that's E. Okay. Next question. And it's a for loop again. And we're again getting our limit from the text box. The difference here is that sum doesn't start with 0. It starts with 2. And then we have some nasty little trick here where we print a sum before we add to it. Perfectly legitimate, but it's trying to show you that you have to be very careful about what happens when you're answering these questions. So you always want to start with the question of how many times does the loop run? And these are all predicated on having the for in the text box. So all right, with the for in the text box, we're doing j equal 1 to limit. We'll do j equal 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 times, that's answer C. What value gets printed when j equals 1? All right, when j equals 1, we started with sum equal 2. Notice the first thing we do inside the loop is print the sum before there's any chance to change it. So because of that, what's going to print is going to be the number 2, which is C. Now after we print the 2, we're going to add it to 4 and get 6. And when we finish this loop, the value of the sum will actually be 6. So when j equals 2, and we come in here, sum will be 6 at that point, and we're going to print it. So that'll be part C. Then after we print the 6, we add 4, and that gives us 10. So that's when j equals 2. Now what is the final value that gets printed? Not the final value of sum, the final value that gets printed. Well, we printed the 6 when j equals 2. We'll print 10 when j equals 3, and we'll print 14 when j equals 4. So the right answer here is C again. But what is the final value of the variable sum? Well, after we print the 14 when j equals 4, we're still adding 4 again. So that gives us 18. And that is the answer. If you want to try this for yourself, you can put an extra line in this subroutine that prints the value after the end of the loop. That'll help you see that it actually does get to 18. Stepping through this line by line can also be useful. Okay. Now here's the code for the next set of questions, and this one's a while loop. We still have the same concern though. How does this loop work, and how many times does it run? So when we look at the while loop, it does j greater than or equal to 0, and we're going to start j at some limit. And we see that we're decreasing j each time. We're going j equals j minus 1. So this loop is going to count down, and to make that totally clear, I made it into a countdown. So these are not multiple choice, but I think they're a good review, as it says, and there will be similar multiple choice questions on the exam. So if the user puts a 10 in the list box, what gets printed in the text box? What gets printed in the list box? Well, notice what happens here. We're always printing j. By the way, I want to comment here. Sometimes we're printing something that involves the loop variable, j. Sometimes we're not. Either way is fine, and the things you do in the loop can involve the variable or not. It's up to you. So, all right. The first thing then, if j starts at 10, we're going to print a 10, and j becomes 9. We print a 9, and j becomes 8. And we keep going, printing 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It runs when j equals 0 because we have j greater than or equal to 0, so it'll print a 0. Numbers 10 down to 0, and then after the loop finishes, it prints blast off. So for this answer, I'm going to put 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Same question for 1. Okay, well, when j equals 1, we'll do the loop for 1, and we'll do the loop for 0. So we're going to get 1, 0, blast off. Same question for 0. We'll get 0, and then blast off. Now, suppose I change do while j greater than or equal to 0 to be do while j greater than or equal to 1. If the user puts 5 in the text box, what is printed in the list box? Well, so we start with j equal 5, and we're going to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And after we do 1, j gets set to 0. But we're not going to run the loop because we've changed it to do while j greater than or equal to 1. So we'll do this, and then we'll get the blast off. Now, suppose I left out the line j equal j minus 1, and the user puts the 5 in the text box. What would happen when I ran the program? And here I would say, you can say something like endless loop or infinite loop. Of course, it's not really infinite, but it's going to keep running until somebody stops it, or something. So, infinite loop. The reason? Because j is never changing from 5. We left this line out. J is going to stay at the value 5. So because it never changes, it's always greater than or equal to 0, so the loop just keeps going and going. Okay, same answer. If I change j to j plus 1, what would happen? Well, you can certainly put infinite loop here as well. Or you could say, eventually j would get so big you would get a runtime error because the value of j would overflow. So runtime error is also a legitimate answer to this question, as far as I'm concerned. Runtime error may be a slightly better one. All right, let's go to the next question, and I just want to get my 2 lines back. There we go. So here we have another while loop. Now, here we start with j equal 1, and we're adding to j equal each time, and we keep going till j reaches the limit. So this loop counts up rather than down. And that's maybe the first thing you want to look at when you're looking at one of these while loops. Which way does it go? So this one goes up because we're adding to j, and we have a less than or equal here for the limit. All right, so starting with j equal 1, if the limit is 3, and we're printing something each time we go through the loop, how many items are printed? Okay, so j equals 1, we run the loop. J equal 2, we run the loop. J equal 3, we run the loop. J equal 4, we do not run the loop because 4 is not less than or equal to 3. So we run the loop a total of 3 times. 3 things are printed, and that's answer C. Okay, so when J equals 1, what gets added to val? Well, you can see right here, when J equals 1, we're adding 1 times 5, which is 5. And val starts out at 0. Now what gets printed when J equal 1? Well, val started at 0, we just added 5, so it equals 5, and we're printing a 5. Oh, sorry, I should put the letter of the answer, so this one was C. Okay. Now when J equal 2, what gets added to val? Well, 2 times 5 is 10, so we're going to add 10. D. See that because J equals 2. So what gets printed when J equals 2? Well, we're going to have the 5 we started with, adding 10, we'll get 15, so we'll print a 15. D. And what's the final value that gets printed? Well, remember we said this would run 3 times. So we have a 15 after J equals 2. Next time we run it, J equals 3, so we're going to add 15 to the 15 we already had, making 30, and that's what will print. So the final value that prints is 30. D. Okay, next piece of code. Oh, by the way, before I finish this one, let me just ask you this. When I finish the while loop, what's the value of J after the loop's all done? Say I would print J after I finish the loop. Well, under these circumstances where the limit was 3, J would actually be 4. How come? Because I increment J each time. After I do J equals 3 and I'm inside the loop, I will do this line and set J equal 4, but then the loop doesn't run. Still, J is still 4. Now, you never ask this kind of question about a for loop, because in a lot of programming languages, you're not even guaranteed that your loop variable is going to retain the final value when you finish the loop. But with a while loop, it can be important to know what the final value was when you jumped out of the loop, and the control variable here is treated just like any other variable as far as a while loop is concerned, unlike a for loop. So in this case, if I asked you what the value of J was after this loop finished, it would be 4. All right. So here's a nested loop. And it has J on the outside and K on the inside. And what this is doing, it's like one of the little programs we saw in one of the tapes. And it's building up a row of characters in the inner loop, which it then prints. And it does that as many times as we have the outer loop. So let's take a look here. If length and height both equal 1, and my char is this guy, which I'm calling star. Of course it's an asterisk, but I don't know, to paint a type, star is so much simpler. So what gets printed? All right, well, first of all, we're saying height is 1. That means this outer loop will run just 1 time, right? Because J goes from 1 to 1, and it's a for loop. So 1 time. So let's look at the inner loop here. For K equals 1 to 1, so that'll also run 1 time. So we start with this empty row. We put 1 asterisk on it, 1 star, 1 time, and then we print it, and that's it. So the answer here is B. Now if the length is 5 and the height is 1, what gets printed? Well, in this case, we're still running the outer loop 1 time, but we're running the inner loop 5 times. K equals 1 to 5. So 5 times we're going to append a star onto this row of characters we're building, concatenate. So, okay, after we do that 5 times, we're going to have 5 asterisks. So the answer is D. Okay, what if the length is 5 and the height is 3? Well, if the length is 5, we're going to get a row of 5 stars. We just figured that out. If height is 3, we're going to do that same exact thing 3 times. So we're going to get 3 rows of 5 stars, and that is E. Okay. And that's that. So again, practice. And there's another video that I'm posting that has more about while loops and also another little piece of code to work with. So you should practice with that as well.